All right, folks. What I want to talk a little bit about is what's happening here with World Civ 2 and what's happening with this whole idea of this build up of power. Um, One of the most important figures is, again, the figure from the document. It's going to be Otto von Bismarck, because he is the architect behind creating what becomes Germany. And this kind of revolves around that element, because what Otto von Bismarck is doing is he's orchestrating this series of treaties, he's orchestrating this series of wars in his part of Europe. And what they're going to do is it's going to create this greater Germany. And his dynamic with Germany is, listen, we're going to have the biggest military, we're going to have the biggest navy, we're going to have the biggest industry. They create an economic industrial milestone that is going to challenge what's happening in the rest of Europe. And this is because what we are looking at is we're looking at the second industrial revolution, the spread of the industrial revolution from Britain into actually Europe itself. And so it's going to explode. But here's the problem. When you've got someone like Bismarck orchestrating all these shenanigans, all these small wars, all these other things that are happening, and he's taking it and congregating power under this one group, it's going to attract attention. And so what he does is he creates a distraction. He's an excellent politician. He's going to create a distraction, and his distraction is going to be called the Berlin Conference. And the Berlin Conference is all about what becomes the scramble for Africa. Because what we're looking at is we're looking at expanding empires. We're looking at expanding imperialism. Everybody wants to increase that international foothold because they want the resources, the raw materials to go ahead and feed that new industrial revolution. And to do that, they have to go ahead and increase their empire. And so what Bismarck is smart enough to do is say, hey, listen, we realize that everybody is kind of moving into Africa some, but it's really disorganized. And so what I want to do is create a conference, and we can talk about carving up Africa. We can talk about the way to go ahead and settle and move into Africa to help the Africans, as opposed to helping themselves. We're going to help the Africans. We're going to do it in an organized manner so we can avoid wars, so we can avoid problems. And so he's going to orchestrate this Berlin Conference. And the idea being is they're going to invite all the world powers, but not the Africans. And they're going to go about creating an organized way of dividing and carving up Africa. And so they're going to set the rules. And that's really what this conference does. You look at some of the names on the study guide, you look at David Livingstone, you look at King Leopold of Belgium, and they are people that are important in this carving up of Africa. One of those people is going to be Cecil Rhodes. There's a whole country named after him. It's Rhodesia. And the thing is he's the gentleman behind diamonds and diamond mines. What's going to happen is that Britain is going to move into South Africa early on, and they're going to spread out from there, and they're going to create a foothold. And what will happen is this: they're only willing to go so far. What they want to establish is they want to establish a north-south corridor so they can control trade within the continent. France is going to move in, and they're going to move in from the west, and they want to establish an east-west corridor. So they're going to be arguing, they're going to be conflicting, and so they're going to send out scouts, they're going to send out people to go ahead and explore and to create treaties, to put it nicely. And so this is about the struggle for Africa itself. This is where we're going to get Cecil Rhodes. This is where Cecil Rhodes is going to say, hey, listen, Britain, you ain't moving fast enough. If you won't give me the soldiers, then I will take my private army and I will expand Africa myself. I will expand our foothold there. And he's going to push in. That's where he runs into Shaka Zulu, who is head of the Zulu Confederation of Warriors, and he's going to come up with some interesting tactics to battle the modern British along the way. It's also where we start to talk about the spread into Asia itself and into China. That's where Menelik II, that's where Chulalongkorn, who is the king of Siam at that particular point, come in. That's where we create the Union of South Africa. All this is going on, but you got to keep in mind that this is a distraction, okay? Yes, it's important because we start to deal with the Asante Kingdom. We start to deal with all this stuff going on. It's also important that this is going to be the end of that whole African slave trade that comes out of this as well. But meanwhile, what's happening with Bismarck is he's creating this juggernaut that becomes this greater Germany, that he is allying these small bits of Germanic territories into this one huge Germany. And what this is going to do is set the stage for what becomes not only a modern Germany, but what becomes the reason behind World War I, all right? Because he's going to create these series of alliances, and anytime you create a series of military alliances, people get together and say, okay, well, we need protection. Well, what do you need from protection from? And if you make me feel threatened, well, then I'm going to go ahead and build an army. And if you feel threatened by my army, then you're going to build a larger army. And so while we're cooperating in Africa and we're slowly dividing and carving up that African pie with everyone's help except for the Africans, he is meanwhile doing his Machiavelli whole mechanization, his whole mechanization of what's going on to set things up to create what becomes Germany itself. Okay, and the last trigger to that is going to be that Franco-Prussian War that gets discussed in that Ems document. So make sure you take a look at that Ems document, and you have to realize that when it comes to politics, that Bismarck, he's the man. He's straight from Machiavelli, and he says, listen, whatever we need to do, this is what we're going to do to make a greater Germany. And it's going to be his greater Germany is going to lead to this World War I, and it's going to be that greater Germany that leads to World War II. Okay, so there's a lot of things going on. So make sure that you realize what's happening in this scramble for Africa, but also make sure that you realize that this is his way of distracting. This is his sideshow of what's really going to happen. So make sure that you're paying attention to that as it goes along and you get the reading done. All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and let you go for now. Make sure you get that done. Make sure you get your documents turned in. Take care.